Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise, Business and the Transformation Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ron Baker, along with my good friend and Threshold colleague, Ed Kless. On today's show, folks, we're talking the power of differentiation with Barry LaBov. Hey, Ed, how's it going?
It's great, Ron. It's the longest day of the year. Longest day of the year. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Most sunlight. Yep. So there you go.
But it's still the shortest hour when we do these shows. So, but especially with our guest, Barry LaBov, let me just read a little bit of his bio. He's the founder and CEO of LaBov Marketing, Communications, and Training. He's a two-time Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year and inductee into the Entrepreneur of the Year Hall of Fame. And he's also the author of a great book, The Power of Differentiation. He and his wife, Carol, had their own charitable foundation that contributes to worthy causes every year. Barry, welcome to the Soul of Enterprise.
Ron, I'm a big fan. You were on my podcast and you hit it out of the park, so it's an honor. And Ed, it's great to be with you. I've listened to your show for years, so it's a big deal for me to be on. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So let's start with the obvious. How does fronting a 1980s rock band called Mark Urgent prepare someone to lead a brand transformation agency? I mean, was it the hair, the hustle, or the heartbreak?
Well, first of all, I want to share that my music sold well under 1 million copies. So I just want to let you guys know that, okay?
Okay.
Running a rock band is the way I run my business, and there's good and bad to it. It's not a perfect way to run. When you have a rock band, you have the drummer that doesn't want to be responsible to count the songs off. You have the guitarist who can't keep a beat, but he's a great lead guitarist. You have the singer who wants to sing high, but he loses his voice after the third song. And you got to hold that thing together. And you got to make sure each of them knows that what he or she is doing is really important. And that's how I've run my company. So I'm an imperfect person. I got imperfect people. And what I try to do is, and it's differentiation, I look at what do they do that's great. And my goal is to keep them in that part of the song or the arrangement, if you want to say that, where they're going to do great and not worry about trying to turn them into something they're not. So that's how I do it.
Wow. That's awesome. Let me share something with you. One of our pricing mentors is a guy named Bob Cross, and he's a very interesting story. He was a lawyer at Delta Airlines, and they shoved him into the whole revenue management area when that was booming after the airlines were deregulated. And he went on to, convert Delta to revenue management, and then he started his own software company, which did pricing, dynamic pricing, basically. And then he sold it, and he basically retired after that. Here's the thing. He's got an interesting theory about professional pricers that I think applies to what you do as well. He says the best pricers are musicians. Mm-hmm. And you say, in music, the perfect doesn't exist.
All right.
So how does embracing imperfection actually help brands stand out?
Well, here's how it helps. Most of our friends in big corporations really feel pressure to make sure everything they do is right, it's proper, it's perfect. And what they do is they wait and they wait and they wait and they're waiting, and then they finally launch whatever they're going to do. But by then, everything's changed. The world's different. In music, I'll share this. Ed, you're a musician. I think you're going to go, yeah, I get this. So many of our favorite songs, Ron, were made originally from a mistake. That guitarist or keyboardist is playing and their fingers go to the wrong spot and they go, ooh, what was that? That's cool. And one of their jobs is to go back and say, wait a minute, what did I do there? That's how most of our favorite songs were created. So I look at imperfection as a part of the creative process.
I love that. Wow. I remember hearing Yo-Yo Moss was asked if does he strive for perfection? He said, no. He said, if there's not a flaw in there, I'm not being human. I'm not being authentic. Thought that was brilliant. So I love this in your book, Barry. You described the commodity monster as a daily adversary. How do you defeat the commodity monster?
Well, so many of us in your field, my field, and then of course in manufacturing and other businesses are being pressured to look like, feel like, sound like, and price like everybody else. And that is that slippery slope that we all talk about where you go downhill. The commodity monster wants us to diminish what we do, to smooth out those little harsh edges of some of the things we create that are kind of quirky, kind of unique, and they want us to get rid of them. And I'll tell you, I think this is every bit as important as being more profitable in your company. Here's where this is so important, Ron. When you do that, yes, of course, you're giving in to the commodity monster. It eats you alive. You no longer can charge what you want to charge. You're not unique. But here's where it absolutely flabbergasts me. This is where you lose the hearts and the minds and the souls of your employees, because no longer are they working at that place that did some really cool stuff. You know, your faded glory. They're going, you know, we used to be good, but I don't even know what we do anymore. And everybody think about this. How many of us either go through this ourselves or have clients that do? Clients that I talk to say, you know, I don't have good retention at my factory. I don't have good quality at my factory. People are leaving left and right. It's hard to hire. And we go, but if you have no uniqueness, no differentiation that gives significance to your people, why should they care? Why should they stay? So defeat the commodity monster by really trumpeting what makes you unique and let your employees know the role they play.
And I love in the book, you have several case studies where you describe companies that when you look from the outside look pretty banal, you know, selling copper or whatever, but you can go in and find that gem, can't you?
Yeah. You know, what's so amazing is I do not create the differentiation for our clients. I discover it.
You discover it.
It's right there in front of them. You know, it's amazing. And the copper company you talked about had a product that they got from reclaimed copper, you know, in cell phones and other things. The nickname the industry gave them was the, quote, cheap copper guys, end quote. That was their nickname. They were losing money. They had poor market share. They were unprofitable. And we looked at it and we said, you know, you're the only copper process that is sustainable in the entire industry. Okay, so we changed their name to Copper Works, where Copper Works is their slogan. Lots of pride, and they are now the premium product and the leader in the industry.
I love that. Yeah, and you have a great video that kind of shows that. It's a great story. The other thing you wrote, Barry, is you say desperate brands make desperate decisions. What are some of the telltale signs of a desperate brand?
Desperate brands are the ones where they're going, okay, you know what? Our competitor promises this and that. We've got to do that. I don't care what we need to do, but we got to do that. Desperate brands will reduce the value of the employees that are working there by letting them know, look, we're not going to give you information. Just keep your head down, keep working, and we're going to just shove stuff out the door. And we're trying to hit numbers. So we're pushing it out the door. And what happens is all this cascades, this desperation to hit a number. It cascades. And one of my clients, it was pretty funny. One of my clients was pushing material and product out the door to hit their monthly numbers. And their dealers talked to me, and the dealers were cracking up. They thought it was hilarious. And I said, why? They're sending you product that's completely in a terrible situation. And they said, yeah, Barry, but you don't understand. We fix every one of those problems. I said, I know it's got to be really rough for you. They go, Barry, you don't understand. We're charging the company to fix the product they're sending us. It's a cottage industry for us. So those types of desperate decisions, you know, in the moment might appear to be okay. Let's shove it out the door. But in the long run, they blow up your company.
Yeah, it's a hidden cost. You know, you talk about differentiating the copper company, say, but you even work with particular products. Can you tell the Passat story with the missing glove box? I love this.
Yeah, the Passat, produced by Volkswagen, was coming to America. Our client invited us into headquarters in Detroit at the time was their headquarters. And he said, okay, I want you to look at this brand new car. It's in a secret area of the company in the basement. Tell us what's wrong with it. So we looked all over the car and we noticed that there was no glove compartment or glove box. And he said, bingo. And I said, why did you do this? And he said, well, we didn't mean to. The engineers in Wolfsburg, Germany, decided to really do a great job reinforcing the safety of the car, especially in the passenger compartment up front. So they put roll bars and lots of protective materials in there and have right now 30,000 of them being shipped to America. The problem is they didn't realize that as they put all that extra reinforcement in, they removed the glove compartment, the glove box. So he said, how in the world are you going to sell a $30,000 car that has no glove box? And what we did was we turned it into a differentiator. First of all, we did not deny that it was missing a glove box, but there was only one other car on the market without a glove box, and it was a Mercedes. It was $250,000. And we said, look, the reason this car has no glove box is because it has the most reinforcement, therefore the safest car in the industry. And that's why it was done by these very fanatical, very determined German engineers. And it turned things around. People went, okay, I get it. So it went from being, a mole to being a beauty mark. It was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Now, the full story is the very next year, there was a glove box in that car because those brilliant engineers found a way to put one in.
Right. Oh, I love that. You say brands are not created, but discovered. Mm-hmm. I think there's some truth to that with strategy too. Over time, you kind of lose track of your strategy, what it really is. But explain that brands are not created, but discovered.
So often we're so close to what we produce that we think it's no big deal. I talked to a 125-year-old rail car company one day. I was talking to their top leaders, and I said, well, tell me about your company. And the salesperson said, we're not special. We don't do anything very good, and we're probably overpriced. The engineer said, we're like everybody else, nothing special. The manufacturing guy said, we really have too many flaws in our product. The president of the company turned to me and said, what are you hearing? And I said, I'm hearing that not one of you would buy your own product. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing. And I said, folks, you've been in business 125 years. You must be doing something right. And that's what I really mean when I say we have to discover it. There's something right in front of you that you're doing that is the reason that somebody works with you. Somebody buys your product. And we have to discover that. And I'll tell you one big reason, Ed and Ron, why you have to discover it. Because if you don't discover it, you might just get rid of that one unique thing. That's the danger of being an entrepreneur. Hey, I'll change anything to get more money to grow. And it's the story where they go, they used to be great, but they stopped doing blank. They're no good anymore.
Yeah. It's hard to see the label when you're inside the can, isn't it? Barry, you remind me of Theodore Levitt, the guy who said that anything can be differentiated. So I'm loving this. Unfortunately, we're up against our first break. Folks, I'd like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. And do check out our Patreon channel where you can get access to our bonus content. That's at patreon.com/TSOE. And now a word from our sponsors.
And we are back on the Soul of Enterprise. The book is The Power of Differentiation by Barry LaBov. And Barry, I wanted to, first of all, thank you for writing a book that confirmed all my priors. so really, but at the same time had some really interesting stories and challenges for me to even think about. And, one of those I want to ask you. We hear a friend of ours, Tim Williams, sure. Is always talking about how full service means absolutely nothing. Yes. Right. So what do you do to differentiate your own firm in an industry where everybody claims to do it all? Right.
Yeah. Well, one thing we let it be known is that we focus on one word, which is differentiation. It's 6 syllables, 15 letters. Some people cannot pronounce it, but we focus on that. So number one, that's what we do. The other thing we really, really stress internally is that we have to choose what words that we decide explain who we are. So one thing I think is interesting is words create worlds, okay? So there are 200,000 words in the English language, and how do most people describe their business? Quality, service, value, selection, and price. Okay, you know what? We've got to do better. And how often do we denigrate what we do? And this is another thing I work with clients because they'll go, well, we're just a local. Well, I don't want to be a justa or a local. Well, we're pretty much a full service. Okay, what's a full service? Everybody says they're a full service. So I look for words that have meanings. I don't like core values where it's integrity, honesty, whatever. Everybody says that. One of my company's core values is jamming, like a jam session. Jamming. So who else has that as a core value? I don't know of anybody. Another one is rigor. I know a couple companies that have rigor. So I think it's the words we choose. And I also think in separating who we are, Ed, we need to be able to describe us in a way that a lot of companies will reject it and go, no, I'm not interested. Because you want that smaller group of potential customers going, okay, I love it, tell me more. So that's what I think. I think you choose your words so carefully because if you don't, you're like everybody else. And again, that's where the commodity monster gobbles you up.
Yeah, Ron and I are working a lot right now with accounting firms who are getting into what's called the CAS market space. And then the big challenge for them is, what does their A stand for? Is it stand for accounting or advisory? And the way that we describe it, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on this, is if you're doing accounting, like bookkeeping, that kind of stuff, you're McDonald's, and there's nothing wrong with being McDonald's. But if you really want to do advisory work, you've got to be Morton's, and you can't be McDonald's and Morton's in the same firm. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, so often the accounting firm gives away all their best stuff, right? All their insights so that you file tax returns with them. Well, the problem is everybody files tax returns with accountant firms, and it's not a big deal. And what happens is if we don't stand out and say, wait a minute, we do this and nobody else does it like we do, what's going to happen is you're going to be compared on how well you're filing tax returns as opposed to how you saved me on my one big business acquisition or things like that. And I work with a really great tax accounting firm, and I talk to them on it, and they're very, very close friends of mine, and they have the same situation you just said, Ed, and that is they sell the stuff that's not important and they give away the stuff that's priceless.
Mm-hmm. And well, Ron, we go back on history, and that's because the stuff that's not important is the stuff that takes the quote most hours to do right now.
Right.
Until, of course, we now get into AI, which is what I wanted to talk with you about a little bit about now. Yeah. I've seen no less than 3 stories come across my desk in the past week or so that says advertising is dead. What are your thoughts on that, or is going to die?
I don't think it's going to die. I think AI is really great, properly used, to get, and I'm not going to be negative here. I really mean this, and I don't think it's a terrible statement. If you want to get mediocre work incredibly fast, that's AI. And by the way, a lot of agencies do mediocre work and they take a long time. So the first thing I would say on AI is I use AI and I think it has great upside to it. But AI is something that's supposed to serve us. It's supposed to give us ideas, and then we can then go deeper with AI, back and forth. And then we have to do something that a lot of people don't do, Ed, and that is we have to have a conscience. And we have to say, okay, I hear this. Is that the voice I would use? Are those the words I would use? I'm talking about from a creative standpoint. So I believe AI will dramatically alter some of the lower hanging fruit at agencies, things that are like media buying, or again, like I said, some very mediocre levels of creativity. And the agencies that collapse from that, candidly, are the ones that deserve to.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think about is AI is better than most things than I am. It's better at most things.
Yeah.
Not
right.
all, but most things it is better. Right. And the question then becomes is how can I use that power to be when I want to write an email, and instead of spending 15 minutes drafting and perfecting the email, have it get started for me.
Right.
All right. And I use it every day. And one of the things that I found is always ask it for 2 or 3 variations from the get-go. Right. And I jam those together. just like a song, right?
Oh yeah, and that's what I do as well. I challenge it. I make it go deeper. I push it back until I get something I like. And sometimes it comes out with something I go, wow, that's really good. Then I want to go down that direction. But I'll tell you, I know a lot of people that go to AI and whatever it spits out, that's it. And what I just don't want to look at any more LinkedIn posts or get any more emails where it's AI. Mm-hmm. Greetings, kind sir, about something. Okay, that nobody's talking like that.
Yeah. We will, and we'll probably publish it for this. We published an AI summary of this show on LinkedIn. We'll feed the transcript in. We'll say, quote from Barry, create a story. And we will say, this is the too long, didn't want to listen version. So if you want to get the highlights, here it is. Right. So, but then we also have the human being, Greg, who's live tweeting the show because we think that that's important as well.
Right. And I think we have to realize that there always will be technology. There has been technology for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years that has dramatically altered civilization. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, as soon as we were able to have printed Bibles hundreds of years ago, that changed everything. So if that changed everything, AI is going to do the same. But I do believe that the very aware company that is truly bringing something of value will not only survive, but its potential, they could thrive.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit now, and I'm going to take you back to a question that I was asked 20 years ago during a session that I was delivering. And I asked this question not to make fun of this person who asked it, but to get your reaction to it and why you think this kind of thinking is so prevalent. This was, hand to God, the exact question. Ed, can you give me an example of what other partners in this one area are doing to differentiate themselves?
We lost Ed.
We got, I hear you.
Okay.
I'm back.
He's back. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So the question?
The question, this is the question that I was asked.
Yeah.
Ed, can you give me some examples of what other partners are doing to differentiate themselves so that I can do it too? And it was this dead serious question. Like and I don't mean to make fun of the person. It was a dead serious question. They just couldn't think outside the box at all. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, it's sad because we do this all the time to ourselves, Ed. So we diminish what we are doing. So here's a little secret. Ask people what you should not change. So if you have a handful of customers you talk to in a week, say, hey, Ed, what should I not change in the way I'm working with you? What should I? try to find the things that people value. So this individual you're talking about, I think just looked at it kind of like a numbers game. It's like, hey, I'll do whatever this person or that person does and I'll do just fine. The reality is that's commodity thinking.
They're commoditizing themselves in that sense. Yeah. Well, the other thing that I wanted to ask you a little bit about is when you've won nearly 100 awards, major clients, and one of the things that you talk about is overcoming prior success. What do you guys do to make sure that you don't get caught in your own trap there?
Well, on a personal basis, I am constantly driven to make sure we're growing. And I don't think things are as great as they are or as bad as they seem. Okay. But I have worked with a very, very famous, iconic brand. And very quickly, I'll share, I went into their office one day decades ago, and I said, I knew they were on the decline. And I said, well, how are things going? And they said, we just sit around and look at ourselves and realize how great we are and how much success we've had. And I said, guys, things aren't as good now. Oh, no, we've got it all figured out. And literally that company within a year was on the ropes. So I think we have to stay hungry and humble because nothing is forever. That's how I look at it. And the toughest companies that I've worked with are the ones that have been successful. And they think if they don't do anything different, they're going to stay that way. And it's the opposite.
Excellent. Well, we're up against our next break. Want to remind our listeners they can get hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. Ron mentioned the Patreon channel. At a certain level, you can get a shout out. We would love for you to do that. Also, we'd love for you to go to ratethispodcast.com/TSOE, where guess what you can do? Rate this podcast. But right now, a word from our sponsors.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're talking the power of differentiation with Barry LaBov. And Barry, you had a section in the book that I thought was fascinating. You tell a fascinating story about church insurance buyers, from the pastors to the secretaries to the CEO, and argue that psychographics trump demographics. Explain this. I love this.
A church insurance company approached us, and basically to give the audience an understanding, they offered insurance policies that a church would buy to protect their building and protect the people in the building, et cetera. So that's church insurance. So they came to me and the leader said, I know what I want. I want to turn into the Walmart of insurance, because all of our giant competitors that sell a little church insurance and a lot of other stuff, they're selling so much and we're not. So I want you to go out there, do your brand re-engineering process, and come back and tell me we need to be Walmart. And I said, well, I'll do the process. I don't know what we'll find. And what you're alluding to, Ed, was fascinating because, or Ron, what was fascinating was we started to talk to various people, the churches, the employees, the salespeople, and we found that number one, their product was expensive. It was the expensive product, the premium product. Number two, they were not the fastest out there. Number three, they did anything to take care of those churches. They would bend over backwards to do anything. And number four, the churches loved the idea that every salesperson for that company was a deacon at his or her church. Well, guess what? Our client said, you know what? We're getting rid of this deacon thing. I want any salesperson to sell this stuff. And you know what? We're going to go cheapen the product, and we're going to, sell more by selling it at a cheaper price. What we had to do is we met with the leader, and we said, okay, here's what's really interesting. You've got a challenge here. And he goes, yeah, the challenge is we don't understand our customers, because some of them are the minister at a little church. Some of them are the CEO of a large church, or the COO. Some of them are the impoverished person who's working there for, blank number of dollars an hour. And then some of them are retired, well-off people that handle that kind of decision. So they're all different. And I said, yes, their demographic is different, but their psychographic, their mindset is all the same. They are the protector of their church. Doesn't matter if they make $5 an hour or $5 million. It doesn't matter. So we then helped him understand that not only was their differentiator that they were a Christian-based company, but that they were the same type of people that were calling on the customers. They understood. And we came up with a concept called We Understand Why. 3 words. So the name of the company was there, and their slogan, We Understand Why. And what happened was they embraced, and I'll tell you the other half of the story, Ron, because it's really interesting. They embraced this, and basically their business just dramatically upticked. The thing that was best was after we launched this, we launched it to all the employees all over the nation. And the head, the CEO of this company stood up and he said, for 20 years, we've been searching for who we were. And now we finally know. Now, this rallied their entire company, because what was going on, Ron, was people internally were going, I thought I worked at this Christian place, and now we're trying to sell things cheap. And we're getting rid of the deacons. So that's what happened. They really stepped back and realized what they did that was so special that the competition could not compare with.
Yeah, I love that. That famous article, I think it's Harvard Business Review, about Tricia Nixon Cox and Grace Slick being demographically the same woman.
Yes.
But their psychographics obviously radically different. This is a bizarre question, Barry, but if you were redesigning the U.S. Census, what psychographic questions would you want to add to it to better serve business customers?
That's an incredible question. I think that's great. The things that I think are important that are not asked are, what is your vision? I know this sounds wordy, but what is your vision for our country? I would want to get into what is that? Because I think there are assumptions made based on demographics that have really veered people off the step. And what is it? I'll go back to the question I shared earlier with Ed. What is it that you do not want our country to veer away from? What is it that you find most prideful about this country? I want to know those things.
Right. I love how you looked for the common psychographic in all those people in the church. That's very, very insightful. Explain a LaBov jam session and encore sessions.
All right. We, being a bunch of people that were formerly musicians, one day were approached by a healthcare company, $1 billion healthcare company, and they said, look, we're trying to devise a new product. We don't know what to do. Healthcare prices are being very, very challenged right now, and we need your help. We don't know what to do about it. We got 15,000 people. We're, great company, but we don't know what we're doing. And what we did is we created a jam session, and it was not just throw a bunch of ideas around. So what we did in the nutshell was, this was 6 hours we did this. And we did not want to start off and have 1,000 ideas and at the end of the day go, here's 1,000 ideas, because sometimes that's worse than not having any ideas. It's like, I don't even know where to begin. So we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start the day off. We're going to have everybody meet each other. We're going to break them into teams, but the teams are going to be like rock bands. So each team had its own name as a rock band. So they named their own rock bands. And then what we did is we had asked everybody to come prepared with 5 ideas to solve this particular challenge. So we started off with 100 plus ideas. We then had them work back and forth, and we explained to them jamming. The most important thing in jamming is not talking, it's listening. So we said, here's what you've got to do, because a lot of times in corporate America, you're waiting for that person to stop and now it's your turn. What we said to them is, today's different. You're not going to have pressure. It's not about perfect, but you're going to listen. So they went through various phases of listening to each other and coming up with ideas. We then filtered them down to the top 3 or 4. We took a break and brought a band in, and we taught everybody how to write a song. So they all wrote a song at break. When we came back, we said, you're going to focus only on these 3 ideas you like. And just like in music, you get to go up and perform. So that's what happened. We had them all work on their top 3 ideas. At the end, they got up just like performers. They performed their ideas, shared their ideas, including getting feedback from the audience. Here's what I loved about it, and I thought this was amazing, and Ron and Ed, you've lived this with corporate America. Normally, you're done. It's like, thanks a lot, and nothing happens. Well, we said, here's the rules. We're going to give you a synopsis of exactly what happened today and those top ideas, and we want those submitted and shared with upper management within 48 hours. And they were, and 2 pilot programs began within 3 days of that event. And that's unheard of. So that's what the jam session is all about. We go through a lot of different steps, but in essence, it's a lot of listening and then it's collaboration.
God, I love that. There's so much to learn from musicians and improv comedy, right? I've heard that analogy as well. What's been the weirdest or maybe the most wonderful, or one of each, idea that's emerged from one of these sessions?
One of the ideas from the jam session was basically to have a mobile health care unit that could be dispatched to go to the homes of people who were not able to drive. And you might say, well, that sounds kind of obvious. Well, what it did was it saved the emergency room, ambulance calls, all that stuff. And there was a hidden benefit to sending this group of healthcare professionals to these homes. A lot of times they would go into the home and the person's very sickly and can barely move, and they would administer to the person, and they would then say, hey, can I look in your refrigerator? And they would open up the refrigerator to see what kind of food was in there. And often some of that food was the worst food for that individual who might have diabetes or some other terrible symptom they're dealing with. So it ended up helping these people to become healthier. So it was one idea. It was an amazing idea, and it's mobile healthcare.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You quote a guy who says words create worlds. We totally agree. We think a lot of change, it starts with linguistics, right? It's changing the language. I think about what Walt Disney did with, no, it's not an amusement park, it's a theme park.
Right.
It's not customers, they're guests, that type of thing.
Yeah.
What words do you wish more companies use to define their brand?
Well, I'll share one thing about what Disney does that I think we don't even think about. Walt Disney created this situation where you're walking up to Magic Kingdom or whatever location, and you're hearing music and you're seeing these characters walk around, you're seeing signage that explains what's going on. It's the happiest place in the world, the biggest sign. You know, if you didn't have that kind of information and verbiage, you might be petrified seeing these giant things walking around looking scary. I think what corporate America should look at, and I'm not going to give a word, I think what they have to do is be bold enough to use authentic language that's them, not generic language like, you know, the same words that I shared with you earlier, where it's all the same. Let's be bold enough to admit we're not the cheapest. Let's be bold enough. Let's be bold enough to name some of our creations instead of just saying, well, it's a valve. Okay, but let's name it.
Right.
Go to the extra steps. That's what I wish corporate America would do even more.
Right. I love that part in your book where you talk about, you know, car companies not naming their cars. I mean, and you even said Acura, and I owned a TL.
Right.
What the hell's a TL? Why don't they name it?
Right.
Give it more of an identity. That's such a good point.
Right. I talked to Acura's leaders, and they created Acura years ago, and they didn't know what to charge for it because they didn't know what the market would be. And I think they missed the boat. They had created something that should have been up there like Lexus, but they missed it.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember one of their cars was called a Legend, and you know, that was really neat. But yeah, then they went into these two-letter definitions. But well, Barry, this is great. Ed's going to take you the rest of the way home. Folks, I'd just like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. And now a word from our sponsors, including Woodard.
And we are back with Barry LaBov, and the book is The Power of Differentiation. I'm going to ask you, Barry, what is I think, a deceptively simple question. Define brand.
Brand is your promise to those who utilize your product or products or services. It's your promise. That's
Your
what
promise.
people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is brand something? What do you think is that those that say outside the organization? What do people outside the organization say about you? Is that brand as well, or?
Yes, it is brand. What people say about you is what they have heard about you or your experience, and it is your brand. It is your brand.
Yeah. So who owns the brand? Does the company own the brand?
That's a great question. The company can claim the brand, but when you think about it, it's in the hearts and minds of all the people that are involved with it. And we could describe the same company, the same brand very differently. But that's why it is so valuable to protect what your brand is. And as you know, the old saying goes, you can build a brand for decades into something great, and you can lose it in seconds doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. In your brand re-engineering process, you talk about you have to start and engage with your own people first. And I say this is especially true in a re-engineering of a brand, correct? And why is that so important?
It's very important. We go through 5 steps, and one of them nobody does. Another one hardly anybody does. The others are common. So we'll talk with people to start off. We'll do an assessment, and we'll say, we'll ask them, okay, what is this brand? What's it mean to you? What could they do better? Okay, that's nice to know. That's from humans. We go inside the facility, if there's a facility, sometimes it's virtual, and we identify what is unique. We find things right in front of our clients. We go, is this something unique? And they'll go, I don't know, it might be. After we determine that and we jam with them, and we then come up with naming these things, the most important thing, Ed, you just talked about, and that is this. We have to make sure that we not only inform the people who build it, who service it, who've created it and sell it, what this brand is about, what this product stands for, but we have to celebrate it. It's a celebration. And we have to let every single person know that what they're doing is actually significant. You're not in there just walking through the paces. Everything you do is critical because of what we do here, which is special, which is unique. So it's critical to engage your people. And it's funny, the engagement of your team, and that team could be 2 people, could be 10,000 people, could have dealers, distributors, whatever. The engagement of that group is the cheapest investment you'll make in growing your company, because you don't have to go advertise to them. They're right there, but they need to be your army. And when you have an army like that, they're the ones that can kind of calm people down if there's been a bad experience, or help explain why you're doing something. It's incredible. That's the subtitle of my book, which is Win, W-I-N, Win Hearts, Minds, and Market Share, because that's the order. You got to win the hearts of your people. You got to get them thinking that, wait a minute, this is smart. And then you know what? You're going to get some market share.
It's incredible that you're saying this. Is one of the things that I've noticed in my time with corporate America, and Greg, who is on with us now, we're both at the same company at the same time, that it actually changed all of its name brands to numbers. Literally changed all of its name brands to numbers. And I kid you not, when you go to a conference now with this Sage, I'll just say it. They have a card that they have to have at their kiosk. Right. That still makes all of the transitions, because their customers still call it the old names.
Right. Well, think about this. Those of us who have children, we don't have child 1, child 2, and child 3.
Thing 1, thing 2 in Dr. Seuss maybe, but yeah.
Right. And when we name our child, we tell people why we named our child that. And then after the child's growing up, we tell what's special about our child. So why in the world would we not think that way about those rare things we do at our companies?
And every major religion has a naming ritual.
Yes. Right. Well, that's why when Ron talked about Acura, it was a disconnect. And also I worked with Cessna and Citation, and I couldn't understand it. They had a Bravo jet. They had an XL. They had a 1. They had a 1 Plus. They had an XLS. And I said to the president at the time, I said, I can't figure your naming convention out, number one. I said, number two, when I'm out on the tarmac, I can't tell if it's a Cessna Citation. I can't see your logo. And he said, okay, well, number one, he said, I can't figure our naming convention either. I don't know. I have no idea. We just added stuff as years went on. And then here's the other thing. He said, we got rid of our logo on our jets because one customer asked to put his company's logo on. We then got rid of ours, and our operations group said, you know what? We could save $1 million a year not painting our logo on our jets. So they went back to painting their logo on the jets because he said, you know what, honestly, I got to tell you, I don't know if it's our jet on the tarmac sometimes. So we have to realize, come on, that's important. Whether you name it, whether, you know, it's like how many people owned an MP3 player, and not many people raise their hand. Okay, how many owned an iPod? Well, almost everybody. It's an MP3 player. You named it. Now it's got value.
Oh,
right?
and Apple is the master at this. They've got an entire website, I don't know if you've seen it, dedicated to all of the names that they use for their stuff.
Well, it's worth a lot more money than saying, hey, if you want to buy this company, we make MP3 players, computers, and phones.
Yeah. No, because even AI is not artificial intelligence, it's Apple intelligence.
That's good, yeah.
No, that's
like
how
that.
that's how I do it. We've got a few minutes left, and want to talk about this too. How often have you had to say to people, because I know, and I'm not a differentiation brand consultant, but I've had this conversation. I'll give them a suggestion as to what they can do from a differentiation standpoint, and they'll say something like, well, my competitors don't do that. And I'm just like, yeah.
Right. I will hear from time to time, they'll say, well, wait a minute, nobody in our industry has done that.
That means I've done my job, right?
Right. Yeah, so I have heard that. And we have to strive to do something a little different or something a little unique. You know, we said earlier in the show, it's not about perfection. I'm a big fan of piloting something. Let's go pilot this thing. Let's try it. Let's work with a few clients and see if that works. But yes, I have heard that.
Yeah. And Leslie, you've alluded to this in your conversation with Ron. Is it sometimes easier for someone, rather than rebrand, to just start a whole new entity? This is a big debate sometimes Ron and I have. It might be just easier to start a whole new company rather than to try to rebrand internally.
That's a great question, and it comes down to some very, very important questions. Number one, have you a strong brand right now at all? Is it strong? Does it have a great following or not? And if it doesn't, okay, there's not a lot of value there. And the other is, did you have a strong brand, and did you do something that hurt it, that you need to distance from? And that's what it comes down to. But most of the time, it's like, come on, let's build on what we've got.
That's generally your advice is to build on what you have.
Yeah, I mean, we changed the name of one company, but we didn't change who they were. We called them Copperworks instead of SDI Lafarga LLC. Yeah. A little catchier.
It comes a little bit more trippingly off the tongue, as Shakespeare might say. Well, Barry, this has been absolutely fantastic. What a great conversation. As Ron alluded to earlier, it's always the fastest hour of our week to do this show. We really appreciate you being on today. So thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank you and Ron. You both are such great thought leaders in the industries that you serve. And I've followed you. I have your books. I listen to what your radio shows are telling me, and I learn every day. So I thank both of you because, yes, you have your clients, but you're also helping thousands of other people be better at what they do. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Barry. Ron, what do we got coming up next week?
Next week, Ed, we're going to talk to Nick Asbury, and he wrote a book called The Road to Hell and Bad Marketing. And this is basically a screed against Simon Sinek's Why.
Oh.
So if you want to hear the other side of the argument, this guy's got it. The book is amazing, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Well, I'll see you in 167 hours.
This has been The Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Transformation Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Join us next week, folks, at Friday at noon Pacific time. In the meantime, check us out at thesoulofenterprise.com. We'll have full show notes on our conversation today with Barry and where you can find his book. And also, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. Thanks for listening, folks. Have a great weekend.